Okay, welcome to the fifth screencast for Chapter 8. So in the last screencast, the fourth, we were talking about all the different cost curves. We had long run average cost, average total cost, average variable cost, marginal cost, all those different cost curves. That is the short run case for the firm. How do you know you're in the short run? Well, if you have fixed cost, all right, then you are in the short run. Because in the long run, we consider all cost to be variable, right? Firms can change the amount of warehouses they have, the amount of factories they have in the long run. So in the long run, there aren't two different kinds of cost for the firm. There's only one, all right? So in some ways, it's going to get a little simpler, all right, for the long run cost considerations, all right? So what is scale? Well, scale is the size of the firm's production process. The efficient scale is the level of output at which the average total cost is minimized. And that was where the marginal cost curve passed through the average total cost. All right, that was true back in the short run, and it's going to be true here in the long run. All right, so the difference here is what's going to determine the shape of our average total cost curve is actually going to be what we call economies of scale. So the average total cost falls when production expands. A larger firm is more efficient than a smaller firm, then you have economies of scale, right? So as you make bigger and bigger factories or hire more or buy more and more trucks, or do you grow the size of your firm, if your average total cost is falling, then then you have what is called economies of scale. Diseconomies of scale is the opposite. It's that your average total cost is actually rising as you make your firm bigger and bigger and bigger, all right? So a very large firm has to deal with all sorts of management. There's hierarchy, coordination, becomes a logistical nightmare. And so that's diseconomies of scale. As we scale up, we're not getting, well, let me compare it. Constant returns to scale, this is probably should have started with constant returns, means that you don't have diseconomies or economies. Your average total cost doesn't change when production expands. So Olive Garden builds another restaurant. It requires the same amount of capital and labor as a previous restaurant, so output is similar, all right? So let's start with constant returns. As you double your production, the amount you're producing, if your average total cost stays the same, you have constant returns to scale. If you double your production and your average total cost falls, right, then you have economies of scale, right? You want to keep getting bigger then. If you double the size of your firm and the average total cost actually rises, then you have diseconomies of scale. You may actually want to shrink the size of your firm because you're already in a part of the you're already producing so much that it's problematic for your firm, all right? So here's what this looks like on the long run cost curves, all right? So what the long run cost curve has is it has a bunch of short run average total cost curves. So think of an infinity of them. If we, for every output level we were at, we drew a short run average total cost curve, all right? For whatever point the firm is producing at that point in time, we drew the short run curve, all right? So I can draw it on here, yeah. All right, so here is a level of production, say in week 1. There is a short run average total cost curve associated with that level of production. The long run average total cost curve is if I drew in every single possible short run average total cost curve, right? There'd be an infinity of them for every point on this line. The average total cost curve shows you what's called the lower envelope. So basically it's like I took some tape and I slapped it onto the bottom of all those short run average total cost curves. I get the long run average cost curve, average total cost curve, all right? So at the first part of production, let's consider that we're here. Now, these are the different cases. So you might see a U-shaped one, and that means that they have diseconomies of scale. That means the short run average total cost starts to go up, all right? If you have constant returns to scale, it means the short run average total cost stays the same, right? All those different short run average total cost curves drawn in here. And if you have economies of scale, then the short run average total cost curves go like this, all right? So the shape of all those cost curves, then when I take and I, again, slap some tape on the bottom, if it looks like this, the green line, then you have economies of scale. If it's flat, then you have constant returns to scale. And if it's increasing, then you have diseconomies of scale. You're so big that your long run total cost, average total cost, is actually increasing. So just to sum up all this stuff on cost, you may have to watch through, especially the last 3 screencasts, a couple times to kind of get this stuff down. I'll admit it's not the most fun stuff that we do in the class, but it's going to be important going forward for us to understand how firms are making decisions so that we can look at different types of firms, different environments the firms compete in, and things like that. So let me sum up. Costs are defined in a number of ways, but marginal cost is the most important thing for us when looking at a firm's cost structure. All right, you shouldn't be surprised. In an econ, we look at marginal cost, marginal benefit. That's the thing we're always interested in. So by observing what happens to marginal cost, you can understand changes in average cost and total cost, because the changes in marginal cost is actually what's driving the changes in the other two. All right, this is why we care most about marginal cost. And again, the way to think of it, I think, is the students in the class, right? If we add one more student who has a marginal points that's above the average, it pulls it up. If we add a student that has a marginal points below, it pulls it down. So the marginal really does dictate what the shape of those average cost curves are.